Welcome to those of you listening on News Radio 600 Kogo, the Voice of San Diego on podcast. I'm Scott Lewis. I'm here with my friend Andrew Keats.
Hi.
Sarah Libby.
Hello.
Hello. So, do you guys remember when the city of San Diego was trying to pass those new pot regulations? They were trying to decide whether they were going to allow, marijuana facilities in the city of San Diego.
Mm-hmm.
And the chief of police was like, that's going to cause mayhem.
Crime.
Carnage.
So much crime.
So much crime.
All of the crimes.
So our Jesse Marks went and pulled all of the calls that have been made to police from around marijuana dispensaries, cannabis places, and found that there were a lot of not so hinged calls.
Yes.
Not really based in reality calls, and there was very, very few that were actually violent crimes of anything. We found basically that the ratio was one call per dispensary per month.
Something like
right?
that, yeah. And these are legal dispensaries, by the way.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so it's hard to really establish that mayhem has broken out yet.
One way to look at this is that if my block had one call for police service per month, I might consider that a lot.
Yeah, that's fair.
Right? Now, that said, if a bar had one per month, then maybe that wouldn't be so much. I don't really know. I guess I don't have much.
But the one
space
per
for
month
comparison.
includes a homeless person on the same block calling and talking about Obama. So that's not something that's actually connected.
Oh, that includes all of those calls.
Yes.
Okay, yeah, that's not much. In
And
fact,
so
that
the
would be quite common on my block.
Right,
I have
so
a lot of those calls.
Not the only, but many of the few serious crimes that were actually crimes tied to the dispensaries were actually employees stealing money or product. So even those that were actual crimes attributed to the dispensaries were not outside people coming in and causing chaos.
Bringing crime to a neighborhood. Yeah.
Well, there was one guy that was upset about how many people were parking nearby, right? He didn't call the police. He's just that's our biggest thing. There's a lot of people coming to this place.
It's a very San Diego complaint.
Yeah. He's he runs a mattress store or whatever, and he's all these people are here parking for their pot. And it's
I'm used to no one buying my mattresses. We've never had a parking problem before at my mattress store.
All right, Sarah, I got a question for you. Do you have any anonymous op-eds sitting there? Because, boy,
there aren't any in the works.
You got nothing from Nikki Haley? Or
I was trying to think what
Huntsman.
San Diego anonymous op-ed I would be okay with running.
Yeah.
And it's kind of a fun thought experiment.
Yeah. It would be an interesting discussion, that we would have about what circumstance would warrant that. Is Huntsman your new guy? The ambassador to Russia, John Huntsman?
So I've taken this to be a lot like the blue and black dress or the gold and white dress.
Yeah.
It's only fun if you just act like whatever you think is the obvious case and everyone else is an idiot.
Yeah.
Right, that's the only fun way to speculate. And so yesterday I was all Nikki Haley, but today you Nikki Haley people are fools, and it's obviously John Huntsman.
Yeah, I thought it was pretty there's a level of response to this, right? There's some of the guys in the Trump administration oh, hell no, that wasn't us. This was, it's the terrible person. And then there's another level that's just oh no, we're focused on doing good intelligence.
Yeah.
All right, PolitiFest October 6th.
But just to be clear, we would never do it.
An op-ed?
There's not a person we would do it for.
I don't.
Hey, I can't
know
say that. Maybe an
that's
undocumented
true.
immigrant or something. I don't know. There's all kinds of victim of sex trafficking. I don't know.
A prisoner who's reporting prison abuse.
Well, those are all good cases to be anonymous sources in a story.
Yeah,
precisely right.
But this
is exactly the issue.
Different because it was an op-ed. So would we have run Irene McCormick anonymous op-ed saying I'm being sexually harassed by the mayor? That's something we'd have to talk about at least.
Ooh.
Again, though, wouldn't we just say, well, we have plenty of journalists here who are happy to report your story?
I think if the point is they wanted to make a larger case about the situation and would we consider? I don't know. Probably not.
I still think probably not, but it would be interesting.
Yeah.
Well, like Donna Fry if in that first month and a half that Donna Fry was in Filner's administration and left, had before that she had submitted it. That's actually a pretty good comparison because she was a high level appointee. It was
Yeah.
I no.
Well, if you're listening to
I think
this,
no, but still.
if you're listening to this and you are in a position where you want to talk about something sensitive going on at your workplace,
bring the documents, please.
Send us a note or otherwise reach out. We will work to protect you and talk to you.
Find me on Signal.
Yes, and listen to it. October 6th, book it, PolitiFest. I'm just gutted. Bonnie DeManis has turned down our invite to debate. Nathan Fletcher, we're going to do a fun kind of podcast version of it. We got a lot of good things coming together. The announcement next 2 days or so about all of our different offerings, but that just gutted me. I mean, we had such a fun time here on the podcast. She came in. She was.
I don't know that she had as fun of a time looking back.
Yeah.
And it took like 11 years to arrange that.
Yeah. Gutted. Just gutted. If you know her and you want to give her a little nudge, say how much fun that would be, please do. But there's a lot going on. We got a great debate with Soccer City and SDSU. We got.
Thing about it is, it actually would have been fun.
Oh yeah.
Especially since she had already been here. We'd sorted through a lot of the long running stuff. We wouldn't have needed to necessarily go through that again.
Yeah.
It would have been good. Talked about the camp. It would have been good. It's a shame.
We've got a bunch of things planned. Huffington Post is doing a panel as well there. And we've got Soccer City. We've got Cal Matters visiting. NBC is going to be there. I even heard Lester Holt was going to drop by, or maybe.
Whoa.
Got to work on that.
Let's
I don't know.
Put an asterisk.
Yeah,
there,
put an asterisk. So I'm trying to get some people nailed down.
Remember when the president admitted to obstruction to Lester Holt on TV?
Yeah.
That was a crazy thing.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a moment. And then he later said, didn't he say like, that they doctored that tape or something?
Yes, he said that recently.
That would be fun to talk about. All right.
Maybe they did.
We talked last week about this wonderful interview that the Union-Tribune posted of Cindy Marten, the superintendent of San Diego Unified School District, in which she talked about a number of different things. She talked at length, let's be clear, about all kinds of things about how she leads, how she's trying to get quality schools in every neighborhood, all kinds of things like that, and her relationship with the school board. And there were a few points of it, though, that really stood out for us. And Sarah, do you want to set this one up?
Yeah, so I think we were all kind of surprised by the appearance of somebody in this interview who was neither Cindy Marten nor a member of the editorial board, and that was Andrew Sharp, who is...
Yeah, there's always like a politician comes in and have somebody maybe sit by, like the mayor's had people sit in this room with him, but they don't usually...
You've not heard them on the show because they sit there silently.
Yes, that is something that happens often. Yeah. So we were all surprised to see him jump in, not once, but like several times, and sometimes like over Cindy Marten, like answering on her behalf and kind of interjecting. We were all pretty surprised by this.
So there's a couple things about it that surprised me. One at the biggest level is the entire point of the interview. It wasn't like an endorsement questionnaire before an election. Right. It was a look back on her tenure 5 years into the job, which is something that she is uniquely qualified to discuss. It's her legacy. Yes. It's about her. And so to have somebody else continually jump in is just strange on the merits. The second thing about it that's odd is it's not that this would necessarily make it any better, but it's not like he jumps in to refine the messaging on something.
Or it's not like she turns to him and says, hey, what was that again?
Yeah.
What was it, 80% or 70%?
80% or 70%. Or she says something that's like not that succinct of a response, and he wants to put a fine point on it and put it into their like talking points, which is the type of thing that communications professionals often do. or say something to her like, didn't you want to say something about how great things are going at Lincoln, which, like lead her to something. He jumps in as if he is more qualified to respond to the question than she is. It's very strange.
I also want to, before we get too far into this, just sort of provide the context, because I think it's important every time we mention him, that this is the man who twice joked about killing one of our reporters and who compared another one of our reporters to a child sex predator. So
because he
Same
wanted
person.
to tour a school.
yeah. He's paid with public money to promote communicating about educating
what the
children.
school district's doing.
Right. So
Mm-hmm.
we didn't get the audio. The UT didn't post the audio of this interview. So we wanted to highlight a couple of sections of it that, really make some points we wanted to elaborate on. And so in lieu of the actual audio, we are going to recreate the situation. Andrew,
Yes.
Andrew,
Yes.
you are going to play the role of the UT.
Yeah, I think based on context clues elsewise, I'm basically standing in for Chris Reed.
Maybe.
I think so. I think he says Chris.
He says Chris
at
a
one
couple
point.
times.
Yeah.
So yeah, you can. Technically, I'm the Union-Tribune editorial board, but I think specifically I'm Chris Reed.
And I will play the role of Andrew Sharp, the PR professional who was sitting in the room when some of these controversial questions came up. And Sarah, you will take the role of Cindy Marten.
Yes.
Is everybody ready?
The ostensible subject of the interview.
Right. All right. Tape rolls. Clip begins.
So, Cindy, it sounds like you are standing by your grade. And Voice of San Diego, not too long ago, I'll read it so I don't get this misstated. They said that district officials initially claimed departing students had no bearing on the rising graduation rate. These are students who were on track, graduated, and left for charter schools. They said a study by UC San Diego researchers confirmed that students who had transferred to charter schools, had they remained in a San Diego Unified Schools, if that had happened, the graduation rate would have dropped from 91% to around 80%. That's a pretty big drop.
I can talk graduation rate if you don't mind.
Let's actually have the superintendent respond.
Okay, because I was on the committee
That's a pretty fundamental drop right there. I mean, that's 10% drop from 9 out of 10 kids to 8 out of 10 kids.
Which, I don't know. I'm not familiar with what that article is, but...
Though that was, it came from their long takeout on your 5 years. It dug into a lot of different issues, and one of which was the graduation rate.
Okay, I think Andrew should. I think that's a question that they specifically answered in the committee. A little bit more about that?
A little bit more about that. The committee, this is us again.
Yeah. Sarah here.
So I'm Andy now, not Chris Reed.
The committee, okay, I knew there was a committee that had been formed, but we learned from this interview that the committee that had been formed to look at this issue and our reporting on the graduation rates at San Diego Unified School District and make recommendations actually did that and released it this summer.
Yeah, I want to make a little point about Andrew Sharp's comments. So he jumps in under the guise of, I want to talk about this. I'm on the committee. Yeah. He's not on that committee, at least according to the public documents laying out who is a member of that committee.
Yeah. He was like staff support.
There's
like
list of names.
It's like
he's not on it.
Education officials, Constance Carroll from San Diego Community Colleges, people from UCSD.
There's community members, Andrea Guerrero, she's been on the show a few times. A lot of people on that committee. He was not one of the community members on it. Okay, so we finally, so we hear about this. There was no press release when the report came out, no alert that this had happened. We finally had a chance to look at the report, though. It's pretty interesting. The committee's recommendations fall into two broad categories. One is that the need for the regular district exists to report to the public on how entire cohorts of students are faring, who is leaving the district and why, and information on the degree to which leavers were off track to meet new graduation standards. Okay, so translated, what they're basically saying is like, you need to do a better job telling us how, say, the class of 2020 is doing, and how many people are leaving it, and how many people are on track to graduate, and if they are leaving, are they off track to graduate? And then the second point they made is there's an urgent need for educational supports and interventions beginning far earlier than high school. An urgent need. Okay, the two committee members who presented to the board were mostly complimentary to the district, and they said, look, you didn't break the law. You did the graduation rate the way you're supposed to. But they did make these recommendations. And then the board members made comments, and this is what I wanted to highlight.
Yeah, okay, well, let's get to the comment. But before that, real quick, I just want to say that elsewhere in this interview, Cindy Marten concedes in this just before the part that we just reenacted. She says, this committee found a lot of good things, and now we're doing much more to keep these kids from leaving. And that these were good recommendations, and we accept them, and we're happy about them. And it's just really fascinating because that stands in such stark contrast to literally every single thing they had ever said to us or about us, including hiring outside professionals to tar us based on the findings that we made that led to those recommendations.
Yes. The fundamental thing that Mario Koran found when he did this investigative piece, we had basically said, hey, go back and see how they achieved this graduation rate. See how this was a record-breaking graduation rate. How did it happen?
Yeah.
And he one of the things he found was that during high school, a lot of kids who are not on track to graduate leave the district schools, the traditional schools, and go to charter schools, and they don't factor into the measurement of the graduation rate. And when we did those stories, the district put up a webpage that said, it was like a FAQ style. It says, is it true some schools push out the low performers to boost their results? And the district wrote, no, that would be both morally wrong, financially foolish for any school to push out its students. Public schools have a moral obligation to serve the public and help every student reach his or her potential. Again, no, that would be morally wrong and financially foolish. But then, after this committee made its recommendations, it goes to board comment, and Richard Barrera on the board makes this comment.
I know that there's been debate back and forth. Has it been a practice in our district that students are counseled to go to charters? I've been very honest, and I believe it's been, true for many years that there have been practices at the school level, at the site level, never a district policy, but at the site level, where it may be a counselor, it may be a principal who kind of say, boy, the student's so far behind that what we need to do is we need to refer that student, to an online charter school because that's where they'll do credit recovery and that's where they have a chance to catch up.
So literally the exact thing that we reported, and they lost their minds over.
As clear corroboration as possible to what the investigation revealed over those months that they lit into us about, that they brought out all kinds of integrity accusations. And I think it's clear they owe us a simple apology.
They absolutely owe him an apology for trying to smear his reputation and spending public money on a PR official whose sole job was to discredit this thing that they've now validated.
And what moxie to actually be excited about and positive
we're
on
excited to implement these.
On these recommendations that wouldn't have happened had we not done that.
I mean, what Barrera's saying is a distinction that would have been a perfectly fine response at the onset of the investigation to say simply, that is not district policy. In fact, it runs counter to district policy, but a school district is a messy place where you've got a lot of different individuals that are emboldened to do their own thing at the school level. And yes, we do have some indication that that's happening there. That would be a fine thing to say, and then to say, and we'll respond by redoubling our efforts to make sure that doesn't happen. Instead, they just went on a personal focused attack on Mario Koran. They hired outside PR strategists to simply tar him. It's astounding that they so quietly and so casually simply introduced this report that acknowledges these fundamental findings, implements policies to address them, and that all happens silently. There's no press release. There's no new website that's put up in an FAQ style to try to propagandize the response. There's nothing. It just slips by.
You might even call what they did morally wrong and financially foolish.
Yeah, you might.
You might. And this sort of comes out when we have this break in education reporters and such. And I would have not seen it had it not been for this interview where she says, yeah, we're going to work on those recommendations. There was another part of the interview where they asked her, they said, you guys reacted really like Trump to this investigative work. There was one moment where they discover how easy it is to cheat on some of these credit recovery courses. And rather than look into that, you just directly attacked them and their integrity.
Meaning us.
Yeah. And she's like, she had no simple response. And again, Sharp takes over. And it's like, these are the biggest accomplishments you're touting. This is the biggest thing you point to when you say the district is going well. There's a tough question about it, and you defer to this guy whose whole role has been to attack our integrity.
It's just, it's impossible to imagine it happening in another realm. That if there was going to be a one-on-one conversation with Mayor Faulkner about his response to the homelessness crisis, that Matt Aubrey would be perpetually jumping in to answer for him. It wouldn't happen.
It's unimaginable. All right, so we got another takeaway from this, and we're going to get to it after this break. This has been the Voice of San Diego on podcast in partnership with News Radio 600 Kogo, and we'll be back in the podcast version.
This Voice of San Diego podcast is brought to you by Manolatus Nelson Murphy, Advertising and Public Relations. As a nonprofit news organization, we depend on our members, foundations, and sponsors like M&M to provide funding to support the investigative journalism you expect from Voice of San Diego. We are very grateful for all of our supporters, and we will recognize them during the show. M&M is run by Tony Manolatus, Bob Nelson, and Kelly Murphy Lampkin, who bring a vast network and decades of experience to developers, public agencies, campaigns, and others. M&M bridges the gap between clients and the people whose influence matters most. M&M develops successful strategies and implements cost-effective tactics to help clients achieve their goals. The firm specializes in public affairs PR and advertising with an emphasis on media relations, crisis communications, community engagement, and cross-platform marketing. Our reporters at Voice of San Diego have heard from Tony and Bob a lot over the years. Tony, Bob, and Kelly are supporters of Voice of San Diego. Learn more about their firm at mnmadpr.com. And if you like Voice of San Diego's work and want to become a sponsor too, contact us at development@voiceofsandiego.org.
We are back. We've got more on this thing. Guys, you got to come to PolitiFest, October 6th. I had a dream the other day that I got up to speak at PolitiFest and I couldn't talk.
Didn't you tell us last week on this show about a nightmare you had about PolitiFest?
No, that was just something I told you.
Okay.
But it's something.
All right, but that's two PolitiFest.
Haunting you.
Yeah, so I hope I can talk, but you may want to sign up just to come see me not be able to. That might be entertaining in a way.
I would certainly enjoy it.
All right, let's continue on this. There's another section about another area of our coverage that came up. So Sharp.
We should also be clear here that this interview is like 10,000 words. And in much of it, it's just Cindy Marten responding at length.
Yes.
So those don't make perfectly good reenactment options, but those are there, and you should read this interview. But
Definitely.
Right. So Andrew Sharp again jumps in to answer questions when the editorial board pressed Marten on another issue that Voice of San Diego covered extensively, and that is lead in water at schools, and the district's insistence that it needs a new tax, a new bond to pay for new pipes. It figures heavily in their bond marketing documents already that the crisis in Flint and the lead here is a major argument for the new bond and for replacing these pipes, and some of these schools that found lead that they would be served by this.
Okay, so we're all the same people.
Yeah, you're the UT. I'm Andrew Sharp, and you're Cindy Marten, right, Sarah? All right.
One last question for you, if no one else has any. This bond that's going forward, a lot of reporting done on the lead in schools, the level of lead in schools. 6 of the 11 schools that are going to get funding in this new bond, in previous bond measures, and said that they were going to fix those lead problems back then, correct?
No. Can I explain a little bit about this? It's really important for people to remember that the whole issue of lead in the water kind of exploded in the national consciousness in 2014 with Flint, Michigan. All the bond measures that we're talking about, these repairs, now predated 2014, right? And so when they were talking about we needed to remediate pipes, it was not because of lead in the drinking water. It was because those pipes were nearing the end of their useful life, 100 years old, right?
It's bizarre to say it's a separate issue. Pipes with lead poisoning are the main culprit, according to the big study I saw. So how could it be a separate issue? If pipes were going to be replaced because they were decaying, you're not doing it just as an arbitrary reason. You're doing it because there's something wrong with the old pipes. So to say it's a separate issue...
Well, there was something wrong with them, but the thing that was wrong with them, we thought, was that they were collapsing.
They were falling apart.
They were leaking, right? And so what we said in this case, that particular school, is part of the bond measure is we're going to rebuild this school, including new pipes. And the reason for rebuilding the school was that it was an old school and the pipes were old and everything. I defy anybody to find in any of the past bond documents where it says we need money for lead in the water. It does not. We asked Voice to clarify that for us, and they did not in scene. Okay, this is really interesting. Let's get to the essence of this argument. It's
saying it's a really fascinating. I would like to like diagram out the argument. Yeah. It's Palin-esque.
Yeah. So he's saying that. Well, let's go back. Our argument, our finding was that over the course of 3 different bond measures, some of these schools were regularly promised, in each of them, new plumbing.
Yes.
And that in 6 of 11 of the schools where lead was found, they had already in previous bonds been promised new plumbing.
It's worth putting a fine point on this. In these bond measures, they list a very specific set of projects that you can expect to take place if you find it in yourself to vote for the bond measure. That's the whole point of the endeavor. It's a contract between the voters and the public agency to make sure that it's a clear understanding of what is going to be done with this new revenue. Yeah, that's the whole point. And so there are 6 schools that were found with lead in them that had previously been promised replaced plumbing in previous bond measures.
Yes. So this is something that gets me, is something they've done repeatedly in response to our reporting, is attribute things to us that we never said. And so to say, well, his reference to us is, I defy anybody to find in any past bond measures where it says we need money for lead in the water. We never said they wanted to replace the plumbing because of lead in the water. We said they wanted to replace the plumbing. And now they're using lead as like the billing for it. We never said they used wanted to replace it because of lead. They just said they wanted to replace it. They wanted to replace it again.
And had they replaced it, they wouldn't have lead.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And kudos to the UT guy. This is probably Chris Reed again, who looks at that and says, well, wait, that's really bizarre that you're saying that lead and pipes are separate. They're really trying to grab on the idea that there was some sort of, we're saying there's some sort of promise that they were going to get rid of lead before. No, it was about pipes.
He starts out with his most honest argument, which is we needed to replace that plumbing in those schools because those plumbing systems were reaching the end of their useful life. Full stop. That is true.
Absolutely.
One of the problems that comes with plumbing systems that are reaching the end of their useful life is the exposure of lead that comes along with those aged pipes. That is one of the issues. Sure, leaking also an issue, but they're not unrelated.
Yeah.
They're old pipes. One of the things that old pipes do is they leach lead.
But this gets back to their fundamental thing that always comes up. They always want to be able to say everything's fine.
Yes.
But there's lead poisoning your people.
Yeah.
Yeah. We should all here. There's another timeline thing that's worth pointing out is they hadn't even proposed this bond measure when we first started saying, hey, in these schools where they found lead in the water, they had promised to replace the plumbing.
Right.
That was done like a year and a half before the first public mention of this bond campaign, wherein lead in the water became a major selling point.
Yes.
You can't have it both ways, that we need money to protect your kids from what is universally understood to be one of the biggest environmental risks to their health.
Yeah, this is
that
one
they
of the
can face.
This is one of the only things where there's no like conspiracy that it's actually good or something.
Yeah, this is lead has been seen to stunt their intelligence, maybe even cause crime.
Lead to criminality, right?
Like and the crisis in Flint that they keep invoking, they want to bring here as something we're facing. Yeah, is a big deal.
Yes.
It's as big as it gets. So to invoke that, but then at the same time say, you're wrong that replacing the pipes would have somehow fixed this before is just it's incomprehensible.
Yeah.
I because like they just append but that's not why we needed to replace the pipes. Never mind that we said we needed to replace the pipes, and it turned out that those same pipes that needed replacing had lead. But we didn't know that.
Yeah, and we didn't even litigate that, by the way, which we could maybe go back and find evidence that, like, if a pipe is certainly this old or whatever.
Which there are state reports that date back to the early 1990s that pipes from a certain era are likely at a certain age to start leaching lead exists.
To boil our argument down to like, well, they already argued that they were going to get rid of lead. No, we didn't.
You argued that you were going to replace the plumbing, which you didn't, and which you told us in one instance you can't throw a ribbon cutting ceremony for new plumbing, and in another instance, you told us that when it was time to replace the plumbing, you put it up to a vote of the students, and they said that they would rather have a new ball field, and so you gave them that instead.
Let's
at the school where the lead was found.
I want to extrapolate that a little bit here. We're talking about one school, right? And when we first pointed out that they didn't actually replace the plumbing as they had promised at this school where lead was found in the water, and that they had instead actually replaced a field, an athletic field, with some of this bond money, we turned to Scott Barnett, who right now, by the way, is repping this new tax measure as a paid consultant. We asked him.
Ex-board member.
He was on the board. We asked him, he's ex-board member at the time. We asked him, why would that sort of decision have happened? And he said very candidly, I respect that, you can't hold a ribbon cutting for pipes and plumbing. This is a very Trumpian thing, by the way. Like, he says the same thing about infrastructure spending in New York and stuff. Like, why would I do that? Nobody will see that.
Replace an airport, not a sewage duct.
Right. Not a tunnel underneath the Hudson. Not just this, we want ribbon cuttings. And then the other point you're making is about Richard Barrera's case on that, which is that he turned to the students of that school where they found lead in the water and said, what do you guys want? We would prefer having a new field as opposed to the plumbing.
And never mind that it is not good governance strategy to put those sorts of decisions to children. It's an elementary school. It's an elementary school
thing we need to clarify.
Never mind
apparently.
that. Yeah. Never mind that. The other problem is it's an invisible problem. No one could know that what it's by virtue of being hidden. It's not a fair question to ask anyone because the problem is hidden compared to the other one, which is in front of them. They play on the cruddy ball field every day. They're aware of its implications.
But again,
it's like stormwater versus our roads. You ask people, like, what's a bigger deal, the state of our roads or the state of our stormwater system? Well, they drive on the roads. They don't have any. No one has any conception of our stormwater problems because they're not freaking nerds. They don't pay attention to the goddamn stormwater situation. It's absurd. What is wrong with the people running this freaking county?
so
Anyone have any freaking common sense? You can't ask children whether they want to replace an invisible plumbing system. They don't even know what a plumbing system is.
Absolutely don't.
That was good. But it gets back to their first instinct in this, which is that it's an attack that they need to deal with us. That it's us. That it's Voice of San Diego that's their problem here. And that it's not a natural and very important public service for journalists to look at how things were promised in the past, evaluate how money was spent, and to judge whether it was effective and whether there was bad outcomes.
In fact, our line of questioning could only be understood as in the realm of what sort of agenda we have, where we're coming from.
And you see it throughout this interview because they invoke us often unprompted when they're asked about substantial issues. And so, like, in their mind, they're interchangeable. You know, you're asked about a substantial problem and, well, Voice, we asked them about this and they didn't respond. Like, answer the question, man.
Deal with the merits.
Not about me. Well, there was we had a tangle about this before where they were like, you report about that school not getting new plumbing, but you failed to mention that we plan to do the new plumbing next year.
Right.
Okay. I'm happy to point that out again.
We'll be happy to point it out when it gets pushed back.
Yeah. And it's like, there's probably some very good arguments for why they need a new tax increase and the investments in things like new plumbing, new security, all of these things. But you have to be okay grappling with questions about how previous bond measures were spent.
And that's my response on the Barrera clip that we played, which is like, he actually is presenting a response that is valuable and worth isolating, which is, this is not district policy. In fact, it's a complete contradiction of district policy, but it does seem to be happening at certain schools, and that's something we need to address. That is a worthwhile distinction. This is not an order that came from high. This is not a plan that we're operating. It's something that we're dealing with because of outliers within our relatively complex number of schools that we have to deal with. That is a perfectly fine response. It's a perfectly fine response.
And it's not one that they ever made.
And it's not one they ever made.
Infinite opportunities.
Yes.
Yeah, and there's more context around his clip if you want to watch it. It was the board meeting, and we'll highlight in the show notes exactly what day it was. But there was more where he's like, look, we're doing better with our own credit recovery courses. We shouldn't have been doing this. And I'm glad that we figured this out so that we can bring them in, keep them, intervene. This is the point of pointing things out.
Yeah, I know we don't highlight bad things because it makes us feel good.
Whew. All right. So there's a lot more to this, and this bond is going to be something to discuss. That interview, again, we've highlighted it. Kudos again to the UT, and thank you for making all of that information available, and it helped us figure and remind us of some things as well. Our hero of the week.
All right, this is what happens when I'm allowed to choose the hero. Goes to MTV this week for the debut of the show Pretty Little Mamas, based in San Diego.
San Diego is like Beverly Hills, but with better beaches and better tacos.
It's quite a name of a program.
Yeah, I mean, this is like, I'm their target demographic. Here I am giving you hero. I'm a devotee of Teen Mom, and now there's a show about San Diego young moms.
What are they? So are like they're just following them around?
Okay, so they're like single young rich moms. From what I can deduce from the first episode, they're like in the Del Mar
Carmel
Poway
Valley.
area.
Yeah.
They have ladies' nights in the gas lamp.
Oh.
Obvi.
That was extra,
And
Sarah.
everyone in the newsroom just learned what extra means, by the way.
Yeah, I just
So-
used it in the sentence. That's how
I
you
was
lock it in.
completely lost.
Yeah.
Your
So, I'm in. I'm here for it. I'm watching it. I'm invested. Contact us, cast members, if you'd like to appear on the podcast.
All right, MTV, congratulations on your prestigious award. Our GOAT of the week.
You lose! Good day, sir!
Grain beetles. I had never heard of them, but you guys. Grain beetles. The Padres, they're just trying.
That is a snake bit franchise.
Padres are just trying.
Grain beetle bit franchise, I should say.
Padres are just trying. I love rooting for some of these young players. It's a good, they got a good strategy. It feels like year 2 or whatever of the 5-year rebuild. We're trying.
It's something.
Things. It's a fun place to go. But you just like every week, it's like grinding. There's another controversy after another thing. National news because they're giving away beach hats. These straw beach hats.
Big, nice straw beach hats. Yeah.
Some of the giveaways haven't been very good this year.
Yeah.
This one seemed pretty good.
This one seemed like, I was like, that'd be kind of cool. They're putting it on TV. All the guys on TV have these on. They find out they're infested with grain beetles.
Had to recall the whole shipment.
Which you go and you look up grain beetle. I didn't know. Look it up. You watch a YouTube video.
Oh,
and
I'm
it's
absolutely not looking that
It's
up.
it's like that kind of sound.
Like a beetle. Yeah.
Oh gosh.
I like their announcement was great. They were like, there is no threat to fans. However, in an abundance of caution, we're going to recall them. It's like, yeah, don't give me a hat infested with grain beetles. Get out of here. Yes,
So they
definitely recall it.
Now you can't give the goat to them because you buy product. Sometimes the product's got something bad. They recalled it. They seem to act as they took it as well as they could.
They did take it absolutely as well as they could. I can see no problem in their response, except that it's just absurd that that where the franchise is right now. That giving away a free hat as a matter of fan appreciation.
Good one.
This has an insane infestation with a disgusting animal.
So, grain beetles,
Like,
get
sorry,
out of
y'all.
our face, man. San Diego needs
Jerk.
something. We need something. We needed beach hats. You didn't need to do
So
that to our
rude.
beach hats.
Poor Padres. They don't deserve it. That is grim. It's grim. All you can do is feel bad. It's just a frowny emoji all around on that one.
All right, PolitiFest. Stay tuned on the site and in the feeds for the announcement of our programming solidification. Got all kinds of good news on that, and we'll have that October 6th. Sign up and the Voice San Diego on podcast, and thanks again to our partners at News Radio 600 Cocoa.
You're listening to the Voice of San Diego Podcast Network. Visit voiceofsandiego.org/podcast to learn more about the rest of the shows in our network. We've got Cura Chaos, a live podcast featuring interviews with movers and shakers from San Diego and Baja California, and The Kept Faith, a sports podcast. Be sure to give them a try, and thanks for listening.